Welcome into Trifecta Sports Talk. I'm your host, Tanner Bell. Alongside me is Evan Cook. It is opening day at McCoy Stadium. I'm live right from the ballpark. Wait, no, I'm not. Evan, how are you?
I'm very sad. How are you?
You know, the fact that it's raining today, I think makes it a little bit easier, but we were supposed to be at McCoy Stadium today. I got the calendar notification from my Gmail last night saying, like, oh, hey, you're supposed to be at McCoy Stadium tomorrow. Like, nope, no, I'm not.
Yeah, like I looked outside this afternoon and I saw it was pouring, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, there even if they were playing baseball right now, there was no shot that tonight's game was getting played.
Yeah, ironically, we know the ballpark itself, if it drizzles a little bit, if you use the hose a little bit too much, the ballpark's unplayable. So I think fortunately there isn't a game today. There wouldn't have been a game anyway, but
Right.
it's still pretty depressing either way, Evan.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, tomorrow's supposed to be a lot nicer, so you probably would have had tomorrow night's game.
Yeah, probably. I mean, we don't know when the next game's going to be. We don't know if there's going to be a game at all at McCoy Stadium this year. And I think that sort of segues into our first topic today is like, when will baseball return? You know, we're seeing Major League Baseball is targeting May as a potential return. And this feels very, very aggressive. I mean, we're sitting here and it's April 9th and we're not yet at that peak of COVID-19. So you're saying, well, at what point in May could you get baseball underway? But they're being aggressive, to say the least.
I mean, I like the fact that they are aggressive, but it's far fetched any way you want to look at it. Like, you basically have to create a baseball town where all baseball players are staying with each other. They constantly have to get checked to see if they're healthy or not. And this could go for a month. This could go for the entire season. Like, are you going to spend? Is a baseball player going to be okay with spending, say, 5 months with just only their teammates and not being able to see their family, not being able to do really anything fun besides play baseball? It seems a little far fetched for that reason. Granted, there might be a lot of players that aren't in great financial situations where they'd be like, yeah, I guess I kind of have to, but it just seems really far-fetched situation.
Yeah, I think we criticize Major League Baseball and baseball as a whole for being sort of behind the times a lot. And I remember sitting on this program a couple of weeks ago and essentially saying that this is an opportunity for Major League Baseball to be innovative, to be aggressive, and to take it as an opportunity to, further the sport. And looking at some of the things that they're targeting for this May return, you're talking about playing in Arizona. Does Arizona make sense? Yeah, it does. It's kind of close knit. You have the spring training facilities there. You have Chase Field, the home of the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're going to do an electronic strike zone that limits the ability of needing umpires on the field. They can, be in a room somewhere else. So it implies social distancing. They're talking about 40-man rosters being available for games, which would allow them, if a player were to contract COVID-19, so they could properly quarantine those players and have enough players to continue the games without having to suspend the season further. No mound visits from players or coaches. Players would use the stands as a bench, which makes sense. You have these empty ballparks, plenty of room to spread out if you're players. And it has the buy-in of the MLB, MLBPA, which is a huge part of it. And then obviously the number one factor here is the health officials. And based on all the reports, the health officials have sort of bought into this program that Major League Baseball is instituting. And that's 100% critical here.
Oh, God, yeah. But the question I have is, when does Arizona hit their peak?
Yeah, and also I think when you think about it, you're like, well, they're doing 7-inning doubleheaders, so they're trying to get to 162 games. So, I don't like that part of it. I love 7-inning games. I think from a time perspective, like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about 7-inning doubleheader minor league games, which we know to be rather quick and effective, or are we talking 7-inning major league games back to back, which, honestly, could be all day.
Yeah, like, I mean, even Tanner, you and I both know the final week last year we had back-to-back days of doubleheaders, and it was just brutal. just for us just watching it. And like both of those games, each one of those games went 3 hours, and there were 7 innings. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Are you going to be able to sit on if you're a ball player, you're going to be able to be on a field for say 7-8 hours to play 14 innings of baseball?
Yeah, and I'd say the other question is, how many days in a row can you play 14 innings? I think yes, you could have a 40-man roster available for a game, which yes is a lot. It's more than 26 that they would have this season otherwise. But can you really play 3 or 4 days straight of 14 innings a day and have the pitching staff to handle it? There's a lot of questions there, but if you think about it, you could get a starter to go 7 innings. So, it's a little bit different than minor league baseball in that aspect, but I would have liked to see them maybe try to cut the number of games down, maybe get it to 140, 130. I thought that would be a better option for them than trying to force in 162.
Yeah, you're going to have to. You're not going to be able to force 162 even if you were to start in May. I mean, granted, you would be, say you start May 15th, which you and I both know is not going to happen unless they literally go out there in the next 2 weeks. If you're going to do 162, that'll take you to basically mid-October on regular schedule. Are you going to keep going that farther just to play the 162? Because chances are, even if you were to do this, I don't see it even happening in May. I'm thinking June or July, and that's the mindset I personally been going with. That you're going to be, you're not going to see sports for a couple of months.
Well, you'll see sports before that. I do. I mean, you're going to see
in the United
sports.
States.
You'll see sports in the United States before then. I think mid-May is aggressive. I think early June is probably a realistic target. The question I have here is like, all right, so we're saying players are going to be in Arizona for 4 months at the minimum. Well, that means the minor league baseball season's over, right? Essentially, you're not going to have minor league baseball unless they do a similar situation where maybe they do it in Florida, maybe they do it in Arizona too. But I think minor league baseball being played at minor league ballparks is probably over too, which might mean we've seen the last of the Pawtucket Red Sox at McCoy Stadium, which would be unfortunate.
It would. I mean, it would have been nice knowing that the final game of McCoy Stadium was the final game of McCoy Stadium, which you and I, Tanner, you and I both know that was by far the best game that we saw last year.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. But who knows what could happen? There could be too many delays in the construction of Polo Park, and the city of Pawtucket lets the PawSox play at McCoy another year.
Right, if it makes sense for them to allow them to play another year. So that's really the big question here. I think we'll hear more on this in the coming weeks, and as this progresses and as the modeling continues to have more data, we'll see what happens with Major League Baseball. Obviously, there's a lot of money tied into this, and that's what's going to come down to is, does it make sense to do this? And from a player's perspective, it's, well, what does our salary look like for next year? What does the payroll look like? And if you're Mookie Betts, are you a $300, $400 million player, or now you're worth $200 million? So there's certainly a drop off here just from a revenue perspective, and that will trickle down to the players. So that changes the whole dynamic of how you build a roster for 2021, 2022, 2023, because I think you're going to see a lot of these marquee players like a Mookie Betts sign a bridge deal to sort of see, all right, will the revenue bounce back enough in 2021 where my value becomes $400 million again? That's another part of this.
I don't think it's far-fetched to say that Mookie Betts, assuming there's no baseball this year, it's not far-fetched at all that Mookie Betts does sign like that bridge gap to make, say, $20 million in 2021. That's not far-fetched at all, because you're right. You're losing out you're losing out on a season of revenue, assuming there is no baseball. If the baseball TV deals are worth a lot of money, and if the owners lose out on that, it's going to make a dent in how much players are going to be getting paid.
Yeah, certainly. And one of the things that was supposed to happen today, obviously, was PawSox opening day. The Pawtucket Red Sox, about 2 hours ago, announced that they are doing a Twitch live stream of a Pawtucket Red Sox game versus the Boston Red Sox. They were not supposed to play the Boston Red Sox today. They were actually supposed to play the Syracuse Mets today. But they're playing the Boston Red Sox, I guess, because they wanted to play in Fenway Park. It's actually a pretty cool idea, and let's check in on the boys here. Let's see how they're doing.
My career, or road to the show,
Ooh.
like whatever, like video
Red
game
Sox
you
are
play,
up 4-3.
like you always made yourself.
Ooh.
So
Who do we have on here?
going into a video game and seeing like yourself already is really cool. It's definitely something unique that not a
They
lot
have a
of
player
people
in the
can say,
broadcast here.
but it's truly an honor.
First out by Chavis. Now Pilar facing Kyle Hart. What were the things that
Something on Tanner?
Yeah.
Tanner, you get hopefully right on the
Yeah, it's not letting me do it. Okay.
It's Tanner.
So
it's Tanner Hart.
Yeah, that's kind of funny that I drop in.
Yeah, my off season was.
Bill Koch of the Providence Journal just tweeted out the lineups for the PawSox. It's Lynn, Chatham, Dahlback, Castillo, Akami, Whitty, Hernandez, Longy, Centeno, Hart on the mound.
I mean, it's a cool idea. I mean, I would have liked to see it against probably the Syracuse Mets, but hey.
Some downtime, then the next
got Kyle Hart on the mound. That's probably the line. Yeah, I wish they probably tied in Billy McMillan maybe and get Billy involved to
on my craft
potentially build a lineup. But yeah, I think it's a cool idea. Minor League Baseball as a whole has done a sort of this is supposed to be Minor League Baseball's opening day across the board. So they did this really big initiative today where they were trying to sort of drum up this opening day at home, which was kind of what Major League Baseball did a couple weeks ago. Definitely disappointing, but I am under the impression now, based on this Major League Baseball potentially coming back in May, that I think minor league baseball is done for 2020 before it even started.
I want to disagree with you, and I want to emphasize want.
You should debate. I mean, I don't look.
No, Tanner, trust me, I know.
If it's safe to do it in August, okay, so maybe you get 60 games in. Do you do that? I don't know.
Sure, but I mean, you do want to have some sort of minor league season because if you're a team, you have the minor leagues to groom possible future players for your major league roster. If you do miss out on the minor league season, they're losing out an entire year of grooming, and you have to face it. These are people's lives. If you screw them out of, say, a year of possible major league pay, that could have some severe backlash towards them later on in the year, later on in their lives. So I say mid-July on the East Coast, all, health officials are saying that it's okay to have sporting events with fans in attendance. I think it would totally be worth it to say have a 90-game season and maybe play an extra month going into October, maybe just delay the end of the minor league season a month. Because face it, no matter when the major league season, it's going to end a lot later than, say, around Halloween for Game 7 of the World Series, at least.
Yeah, and I think logistically too. I mean, really, what is the goal of minor league baseball? It's to develop major league talent. That's the number one goal. That's the number one priority. You talk about, talk to players, you talk to coaches. I mean, Billy McMillan. He stresses the idea of, his job is to get players ready for the big leagues and put them in big league situations and make them better off for that. So that's the goal of minor league baseball. It's a business. Yes, there's franchises and owners that pay money, but at the bottom line, it's meant to develop talent for the major league rosters. So that can be done in an empty ballpark that does not need fans. Major League Baseball is the product that has to develop and generate the revenue stream that then funds the entire system and the entire ecosystem. So I wouldn't be shocked that minor league baseball gets played behind closed doors. I think what's the point of bringing it back? There's obviously some revenue for the franchisees, but from Major League Baseball's perspective, I think they would love to see this thing be contracted and consolidated. And that's obviously been what they've been talking about, right? For the past years, Major League Baseball wants to see fewer franchises and better quality facilities for their minor league players. This might sort of push them onto that path quicker.
For a lot of minor league teams, the thing that basically helps them survive throughout the year is two things: A, advertising, and B, gate openings. If you're a team, you say you're the I don't know, the Lowell Spinners, you're not getting the only way you're really making money is through TV, is through gate openings. If you don't have those gate openings, you're not going to have that income basically to survive. It's going to get to a point where you're going to have just a lot of teams just fold.
Yeah,
So-
which I think if you're Major League Baseball, that's probably what you want. I don't know if that's what you openly want, but they've been wanting to consolidate the minor league system for a while now.
True.
So
True.
they would be nothing happier, because if you look behind me on my green screen today, you see all the advertisements from McCoy Stadium from last year. You know, if you do look at a pie chart of a lot of these smaller leagues, and this goes for like Major League Soccer and these other leagues too, is the pie chart for major league teams and Major League Baseball, TV and radio make up a significant portion of that pie, as well as merchandise, you know. And then a smaller portion of that obviously is game day revenue. But for these minor league teams, game day revenue is basically, you know, 80 to 90% of their entire revenue stream.
Right.
And that funds the advertisements, that funds, you know, tickets, concessions, and the merchandise they sell at the ballpark. Because you got to remember, minor league teams, yes, they sell online, but a lot of it gets done in the stadium still.
Right.
They're not really built for this.
Right, and then a lot of minor league teams, their broadcast is through MLB TV, so it's not even on your local broadcast. I know Lehigh Valley does a thing where they televise all home games in market, but you don't have, say, a Nesson type thing where all of your games are broadcast, and that's where a lot of money comes from for just, you know, at the major league level.
That's what's funded the expansion of salary. That's why salary caps have continued to go up at the major league level. And that's how a team like the LA Dodgers, when the new ownership purchased them, 8 years ago now, something like that.
About that.
They signed a massive TV deal, and all of a sudden the money started flowing in that team, and now they're one of the highest payroll teams in the league. So
right,
that bankrolls these teams, and that's enough to sustain their major league payroll. And think about it, like if you're not having the ballpark open with fans, there's less overhead in that aspect of it.
Right. So if circling way back to just having minor league baseball in general, if you're going to say have a minor league game at McCoy Stadium this year with no fans, that's just idiotic. You're going to have to do exactly what Major League Baseball is trying to do and have it in basically a baseball town with no fans, because otherwise just the expenses of just moving players around is going to absolutely outweigh the benefits and make it pointless for the owners.
Right. I mean, could you generate more revenue? Could you put MLB TV on steroids, right? Could you sign some new television deals as a league collectively, right? There's some options they could do. What if MLB TV signed a deal with ESPN Plus or NBC or Fox or, you know, Netflix even? Like, think outside the box here, because I think there is a way for them to generate enough revenue to cover their expenses. You just have to be very creative about it.
Oh, sure. But yeah, you're going to have to do something like that just to make money. But yeah, if you're not having fans, basically what I'm trying to say is if you're not having fans in the stands, it's pointless to have it baseball, say, at McCoy Stadium this year.
100%. Because most it's you're talking about hours and hours of driving on buses, plane rides, things like that, which just wouldn't make sense. And they can't afford charter flights. So, you know, that's a downside of being a minor league baseball player. So we're going to move on from that topic. We're going to be talking about the all-time roster. This is something that I have been talking about quite a bit on this program, but it's finished. The all-time 25-man roster, including the all-time PawSox manager, is compiled. It's completed. This is a starting rotation. It's highlighted by Dick Poyle, Oil Can Boyd, Bronson Arroyo, Anthony Hurtado, Jeff Supan, and Brian Rosen. I picked the year from which they excelled and were also with the PawSox long enough to qualify for this list. But just look at those statistics from Dick Poyle's season in 1973. That was the inaugural AAA side for the PawSox. 182 innings pitched. That's a ton. A 2.03 ERA. Off the charts. Absolutely off the charts. And then Brian Rose in 1997 probably had the second best pitching season. He had a 17-5 record, which is a team record, 190.2 innings.
Yeah, he basically pitched 7 innings every fifth day. Yep.
Yeah. Off the charts. And obviously, you know, Oil Can Boyd is a strikeout machine. I believe he holds the most double-digit strikeout games in PawSox history. He's obviously still around in the community and very much active with the PawSox to this day.
Yeah, you see him at McCoy all the time.
This is my bullpen. Obviously highlighted by Trevor Kelly and Ryan Brazier. This is two recent players, but other guys: Darrell Irvine, Travis Hughes, Fernando Cabrera, John LaRose, and Corey Bailey. I do look at LaRose's season from 1978, 1.60 ERA, 73 innings pitched. 73 innings pitched. The bullpen's a ton. Travis Hughes in 07, this was 75 and a third. That's also a lot of innings to pitch out of the bullpen.
73 innings is a lot for a major league player, never mind a minor league player.
Yeah, 10-5 record, 15 saves from LaRose that year. But Travis Hughes, 24 saves, 1.91 ERA in 2007. I mean, that's an impressive stat line. 72 Ks too.
Yeah, I'm guessing there's 6 losses for 6 point saves.
Yeah. Yes, that's usually how it works. Ryan Brazier in 2018, probably the most dominant reliever I've ever seen at McCoy Stadium is Ryan Brazier in 18, 1.34 ERA. I mean, this was a guy that came out of nowhere, quite literally out of nowhere, was a signing by Dave Dombrowski, had impressed a little bit in spring training for the Red Sox, but no one expected anything out of him. They really didn't. They threw him in AAA, and the facts are the facts, and he just got stronger and stronger as that season went on with PawSox, and he got to a point where you just couldn't ignore him anymore. And all of a sudden, he was thrust onto the major league scene, and the rest is history with him.
Yeah, I mean, manager Kevin Bowles at the time said that he was the de facto closer for the Pawtucket Red Sox, and face it, that doesn't happen in minor league baseball anymore, where they have where a team will name a closer.
Right, and typically the reason for that is that you want to see, essentially, okay, we want to see different guys in that kind of situation. That's all it is in the minor leagues when you're looking at pitchers. You're trying to put guys in different situations that they might see at the major league level. So that's why you just pick and choose of where you put guys in high leverage. And yeah, Brazier was so dynamite that year. And, Kelly was too in 2019, if we're being honest. Those teams were such underperforming teams that they didn't really get the opportunities that they probably should have to really get tested, which is unfortunate. But, still 52 appearances from Trevor Kelly in 2019. That's another guy I think that came out of nowhere, really. I mean, we were sitting there before the season saying, all right, Travis Lakins is the guy to watch out for, Josh Taylor. But we weren't really thinking about Trevor Kelly, and, he was the best reliever in that bullpen last year.
No, even on MediaNet last year, I remember us talking to Travis Lakins basically because we thought, hey, this is a guy to watch out for. The same thing with Chandler Shepard, who did make his major league debut last year, just not with the Red Sox because he stunk with the PawSox. But that's besides the point. But
poor Chandler.
Yeah, I felt so bad for him. There were a lot of times where it's innings would just get away from him. He'd give up. There would be an error behind him. He'd just fall apart, or just. I remember there was one of his last games with the PawSox last year. He gave up a grand slam after having a pretty good outing, and then it was on a curveball away, and someone just flipped it to the opposite field for a grand slam.
Brandon Workman had a couple moments with the PawSox where I was like, all right, this guy's career is over. And I'm not talking off the field. I'm talking on the field. He had some really, really bad performances. He had a bad attitude on the field. And then last year, he became the de facto closer for the Boston Red Sox, and I think he's going to be the closer this year for them if they ended up playing. So I think we count guys out too soon, and I think Shepard was one of those guys, and comes back to bite you.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, with last year, he pitched decent with the Orioles.
Yeah, he definitely did, and we're going to move on here. My catchers and my infielders, Ryan Lavarnway and Gary Allenson. For the catchers, Allenson, 1978, he had a 913 OPS, 299 average. And even Lavarnway's numbers, to get that kind of production out of the catching position is unheard of. Allenson at 20 bombs, 76 RBIs in 1978. That's an impressive stat line for a catcher.
Those three stolen bases.
3 stolen bases. That's more than you'd expect. Going into the infield here, you got Wade Boggs, Jody Reed, Marty Barrett, Jeff Bailey, Earl Snyder. I look at that stat line from Jeff Bailey in 2008. This was a long-time PawSox farmhand, and he struggled a lot with the PawSox, but in 2008, something just clicked with him. He had 301, an OPS of 967, which is off the chart.
That is ridiculous.
off the charts. 25 home runs, 75 RBIs, just stats that jump off the page. And then Earl Snyder was a guy I think I kind of snubbed, so I put him in as a utility. He does play multiple positions. 273 average, not great, but franchise record in home runs and RBIs. He did it in the same season in 2004. And he did play a couple of games with the Boston Red Sox on the 04 World Series team. Didn't really contribute, but he was around. Yeah, so he's an 04 ring member. And then we'll move into the outfield here. This one was actually very difficult for me. I was picking 4 players, and I had the name Jim Rice and Fred Lynn, and ended up picking Rusney Castillo and Trot Nixon to fill out the other 2 slots. 1974, second season of McCoy Stadium for the Pawtucket Red Sox. Can you imagine walking through the turnstiles and your outfield has Jim Rice and Fred Lynn in it? Oh, my God.
My grandfather always tells this story about how it was probably around that time where the PawSox were making a push for the playoffs, and he went down there with his son, my uncle, for a game, and he was there. My grandfather was there with his brother too, and they both got cocked, and the son had my uncle had to drive them home. But it was like a really late game. There was like a rain delay in the middle of it. There was just this whole thing about that.
Yeah, I mean, but I can't imagine going into a AAA ballpark in today's day and age and seeing 2 Hall of Fame caliber players. Obviously, Rice is in the Hall of Fame. Fred Lynn is not in the Hall of Fame, but you could argue like his numbers were there. He was a borderline Hall of Fame player. But Jim Rice in 1974 hit 337, 971 OPS at 25 home runs, 93 RBIs. And you're like, wait, how is he there for 117 games? That was baseball back then. You just had these really great players just play longer in the minor leagues. I mean, can you imagine a player doing that in today's day and age? It would
never happen.
Yeah, they would do it for 2 months and they'd be called up to the majors. You've seen a lot of like top players like Ronald Acuna Jr., Vlad Guerrero Jr., and all these really top prospects that come through. Rafael Devers, Alexander Bogaerts, Mookie Betts, the top players in the system. They don't really play AAA baseball anymore. They play AA and then they make the jump. But I could imagine going to McCoy and seeing Fred Lynn and Jim Rice line up. But hey, we got Rusney Castillo, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was the year that he won the batting title.
Yeah. Triple Crown, too. Didn't he? No, he didn't Triple Crown.
No, I think he was short on the Triple Crown, but he was
short on that. Title. Yeah, Rusney in 18. Rusney is probably one of the smartest hitters I think I have ever seen up close and personal. And I know that's saying a lot. I've seen a lot of really good hitters, but Rusney has changed the way he plays year after year. He's obviously become a better fielder. He's become a better base runner, which was something he lacked early on, but he is one of the most intelligent hitters you'll find. And I wanted to include this strikeout rate for Rusney Castillo to just show you, yes, his stats were down in 2019. It was one of his worst performing years on paper. If you look at his average, you look at the stats as a whole. But if you look at that strikeout rate in 2019, he cut down his strikeout rate to a career best 13.7%. So you think Rusney had a down year, and then you look and you peel it back a little bit, and you're like, well, actually, he was a more effective hitter. He just struck out less, and usually when you strike out less, you mean, okay, so he probably hit a lot of hard outs, was unlucky that way.
He was. Especially early on in the year, it was like there were so many times you just see a hard hit ball to the gap, and it outfielder make a great play. There was like one of those a game, and and if that happens over 30 games, that's 30 hits. That's going to be a big dent into your average at the end of the year.
Yep, and that definitely affected him last year. But I think this stat really shows that he actually had probably a better productive year than he had the previous year. But unfortunately, the balls just didn't fall in. And that was an impressive 2018 season from Rusney Castillo. Trot Nixon, this is another interesting player to me in 1998. He hit 23 home runs. You don't typically think of Trot Nixon as a home run type of hitter. He was a 2020 player in 1998 for the PawSox. He had 26 steals. And you don't think of Trot Nixon as really a flying around the base type player. So he did it all in 1998.
Yeah. I did not think he would have done something like that. He was granted he was an outfielder, but
Gold Glove caliber outfielder.
Yeah, I mean he wasn't. He was more of just like a gaps hitter, like kind of like a guy we saw. Replace him in JD Drew.
Yeah.
Where he was more of a just get on base type of hitter, not steal a bag type of guy.
And then my manager, Joe Morgan. Joe Morgan's the only PawSox manager in their Hall of Fame. 9 seasons. He was the longest tenured PawSox manager, 601 wins, most in franchise history. At the end of the day, his teams had a losing record, but they did win, I think, one Governor's Cup, finished in 180 wins and then 81 wins the following year. And that 81 win season was the highest the PawSox had for over a decade. There was other candidates that I was going back and forth with. Buddy Bailey was one. Ron Johnson was one. Ken Mako was one. But yeah, you sort of look at it and you're like, yeah, Joe Morgan didn't have the greatest winning percentage, but he sort of had the tenure, and they did win under him. And Joe Morgan did go on to be promoted to the Boston Red Sox, where they ended up winning the pennant that year. They went on a crazy run and ended up winning the pennant 2 of his 3 years, I believe, at the helm of the Boston Red Sox. So, and he's a nice guy too. We had the privilege of meeting Joe Morgan a couple years ago when he was inducted into the PawSox Hall of Fame. So that always helps.
Yeah. When
just being a little nice.
When he was talking to the media, I learned more in that 15 minutes about baseball than I did in the previous 3 years.
Yeah, no, definitely insightful, and it's always interesting to hear what a guy like that has to say. And I remember sort of reading the quotes from that media session, and he was asked about pace of play. And usually when you ask an old timer or someone who's been around the game for that long, or someone that was a former manager or player, usually they're not very keen to change the way the game is played. But I remember Joe Morgan being rather emphatic of saying, yeah, no, there's a pace of play problem, which I thought was interesting at the time.
I was thinking I might be able to find the transcripts because I had it on my laptop for a long time.
It's all right. We're going to move on here. So I've been doing a PawSox rewatch series on TrifectaNetworkSports.com, and this past week I went back and watched a couple of the games that Dustin Pedroia had on rehab with the PawSox this past year. He played second base. He had a couple of good games with the PawSox, and I remember at the time getting this sort of weird feeling and that it might have been the end for Dustin Pedroia. And he was healthy-ish, I guess, when he was playing with the PawSox, and shortly after that stint, he went up to Portland and ended up getting pulled from a game, and that was the rest of pretty much history. Hasn't retired yet, but the second that contract expires with him, that's probably going to be when he announces his retirement officially. But I had the pleasure of watching him those last couple of games, taking the field. And he had the confidence, that swagger. If you've ever been around Dustin Pedroia, he's a swagger type of person. He has a ton of confidence. And after that was announced that he was getting pulled from the game, you could just tell he was a different person, that he finally acknowledged that, hey, this is probably it. And I just wanted to look at and make his Hall of Fame case. I don't know, Evan. This is a tough one for me.
That last year when he played those 8 games, that killed him. Because his average went below 300, and if you're above 300, your case is so much better beforehand.
Yeah, and if you look at sort of the accolades, the trophy case, I mean, former league MVP, rookie of the year, 2-time World Series champion, 4-time Gold Glove winner, 4-time All-Star, Silver Slugger. That's enough medals to get you into the Hall of Fame. But yeah, you look at it and you say the first 7 years of his career, 303 hitter. That's where most of those accolades came in, was those first 7 years. Then you start thinking, all right, second 7 years, what happened to Dustin Pedroia? He had a couple productive seasons in that back half, but there was the wrist injury, which actually popped up twice in that back 7. He had a wrist injury in 2013. That lingered with him for a couple of years. That's one of the toughest things to deal with if you're a hitter, especially a second baseman. And then obviously you had the knee injury the last couple of years that really hindered him. So the fact that you see the splits right there, you could tell he was on a Hall of Fame track, and then injuries plagued his career. And you look at the all-time rankings for second baseman, he's probably the best modern second baseman in the last 25 years. If you really think about it.
Yeah, I would definitely think about it. And you even got to think that he hit 218 in 2016. That's absolutely ridiculous. And he was dealing with a lot at that point. I mean, granted, he didn't have the knee injury at that point, but there was, like you said, like the wrist, like all of that. Like that, he was still dealing with that.
Yeah, and you just I think it tells a story, this chart right here, where you just look at the first 7 versus the second 7, and there's a lot of players that are like this. There's a lot of players that have the stats, and Fred Lynn's one of them. Fred Lynn, if you look at Fred Lynn's career in Boston, you would say that's a Hall of Fame caliber player. Then he left Boston, and things just went south. Jacoby Ellsbury is another guy. I was looking at Jacoby for the all-time PawSox roster. He just missed the cut for the outfield, but you look at Ellsbury, you look at his time in Boston, and you're like, well, that's a Hall of Fame player, right? First ballot type of player. And then he went to the Yankees, dealt with injuries, and he's not even going to get close. And I think for Pedroia, that's the sort of where he is at too. And the reason why David Ortiz will get in, David Ortiz had a late start in his career, but he was productive right up into the end. He had arguably one of the best walk-off seasons any hitter has ever had, and that shouldn't be a shock because we know David Ortiz comes in right at the end.
Yeah, I mean, just getting back to Ellsbury, granted, he did have a couple of good years with the Yankees, but it was like his first 2 years, and that turned out to be one of the worst contracts in Major League history.
Oh, I mean, I
it's
don't know
one of the
about
worst contracts
that.
in Major League history. When was the last time he played? And they just released him.
That's true. I like Ellsbury. He was a good player.
For the Red Sox, he was on a Hall of Fame pace.
Yeah. You can't make the case for Ellsbury, but I think you can make the case for Dustin Pedroia. I think you can say, all right, this guy was the best second baseman to play for his era. Best second baseman defensively. And then you say, all right, from a hitting perspective, he's a 299 career hitter. That's borderline, probably not good enough to get you in. Career WAR is just north of 50. But I think I look at it, if I'm a Hall of Fame voter, I'm like, well, I love the way the guy plays. Yes, he was one of the best second basemen to play. Offensively, the numbers aren't there. But the fact is, if you want to tell your kid or someone who's trying to play the position of second base who to watch, who do you say? It's Dustin Pedroia. He was a generational type second baseman, in my opinion, and I think he had the career of a generational type second baseman. That's why, to me, he's a Hall of Famer.
Sure. The thing is, when you're doing that, you want to think about who's playing around that time and who you would say would have been better at second base than him. And I've been trying to think of guys that were on the league around that time, say from 2007 to 2014. The only guy I can think of may be Robbie Cano.
But Robbie Cano, that's almost a very similar type career arc, right? Robinson Cano is a better power hitter than Dustin Pedroia, but he also had a bad dip at the end of his career too.
Yeah, I mean, but
Robbie Cano is a 302 career hitter, 68 career WAR. Those are both higher than Dustin Pedroia. He has 324 home runs, but Dustin Pedroia is a better second baseman than Robinson Cano.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But when you can hit the long ball, you can hit the long ball. But
usually you put your worst defender, your worst arm at second base, and Dustin Pedroia was not that player. He was a high output. He gave everything, and to a fault, right? I mean, the reason why he's sort of in this position is the fact that he went all out all the time.
Yeah, that part is true. Now, the thing if you look at his career as a whole, I would say that he's in the Hall of Very Good. I wouldn't say he's a Hall of Fame player. However, I think he does have a better shot from what I'm saying to make in the Hall of Fame, because as we all know, getting into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, it has to do with more of just appeasing the writers. And that's one of the reasons why Kurt Schilling isn't in the Hall of Fame right now, is because he's so right-wing, all the writers just don't like voting for him. And I hate to say that's just the fact of how it goes. But with Dustin Pedroia, he does have a pretty good rapport with a lot of the media members, not just only in Boston, but throughout Major League Baseball. And I think that does help him a lot.
Yeah, no, and he's definitely a personable figure. It'll be interesting to see what happens. And once he ends up retiring, look, I don't hope he retires, I really don't. Like, I would love to see Pedroia back on the field at Fenway Park for one final season healthy. But if it puts him further at risk to potentially have long-term damage, I'd rather have him just retire. But some of the reason why he hasn't retired yet is because he doesn't want to forfeit the salary, and that's a considerable amount of money. It's a life-changing amount of money, and I think he's a great guy to have around the team. I would have loved to see Pedroia be the manager of this team.
You were saying that for a while, that it actually wouldn't be a bad idea just because he's already getting paid by the team. Like, might as well, throw him as the manager. And he definitely has the respect of a lot of the players that are in the locker room. So, why
how
not?
about if you're Ron Renicky? You might never get the opportunity to coach the Boston Red Sox. And this was supposed to be Renicky's, like, second shot at being a manager. And he may never get the opportunity to actually do it. Because I do think that Alex Cora is coming back next year. Because now that Major League Baseball said they're serving the suspension, even if there's no baseball, Cora's back.
Well, first off, you don't even know if he's getting a suspension.
Yeah, that's
You don't
also
even know
fair.
the Major League. Oh God, I didn't want to get down this rabbit hole, but Major League Baseball has been done with the investigation for like 3 weeks now, and they haven't. Rob Manfred said the only thing he has to do is basically just write it up, and he hasn't done it yet.
So if they come out and they're like, Alex Cora doesn't get anything, and then you look at the Red Sox, you're like, you fire this guy. Come on. Like, he's going to get something. Alex Cora will get a year suspension, guaranteed. The question is, does he actually have to serve anything? I think if there's no season, yeah, you served it, but not really.
Or how scummy would it be by
coaching.
Major League Baseball to write this and announce it after they say, hey, we're not having baseball this year? Because, again, like, this has been going on for, like, 3 months now of possible, saying, oh, the Red Sox cheated in 18.
There is a reason for why they're doing this. And based on from what I understand, there's been so much negativity around baseball. You had the AJ Hinch news, you had the Houston Astro news, you have this Cora news. And the fact is right now there's no baseball, and that's very bad news for the league. So I don't think they want to draw any more attention than they have to in this time. That being said, when you start bringing the positive news, you want to dump the Cora stuff. But I think everyone's sort of prepared that, yeah, Cora's going to get suspended. It's just what extent do you punish the Red Sox? And I would candidly say that the fact that they're taking this long means, yeah, there's something, right? There's some type of punishment. If it was just Cora, I think they would have come out and said it. I think there's something further here that they're going to hit the Red Sox with.
I mean, the issue that it does make sense that they are waiting because there has been nonstop negative news, and they may wait until they're saying, hey, we're going to be back. Oh, by the way, the Red Sox cheated.
Kind of funny.
Face it, that's basically what you're saying.
By the way, Renicky's fired too.
Boy. At the end of the day, it's like you've been going on. You've been doing this interview. This investigation started over 2 months ago. You should already have your eggs in a basket by now.
The problem with baseball is every couple of years there's a massive cheating scandal, right? You had the biogenesis thing a couple years ago. Before that, you had the Mitchell report. So there's been this like stain of cheating, and even going back into the previous century, you had Pete Rose gambling on games. You had so many various incidents that baseball is sort of known for being a league where people cheat, and I think every league's sort of like that. But for baseball, it's always like the systemic thing where it's like the whole league's doing it, which is really bad for the sport. At least with football, it's like, oh, the Patriots deflated football. Like, that's one team. But for the league, it's always, for Major League Baseball, every scandal, it feels like it's just a massive scandal with players from every team involved.
I mean, that's not wrong, but at the end of the day, like, the way I always see a lot of this cheating stuff is if you can get away with it, you can get away with it. Like, you have to assume that everyone's doing it. Yeah,
don't tell that to Terry Francona. He might get offended.
That's a whole other thing.
We'll move on from this. That's a third rail topic. We got David Price's McCoy rehab. This was basically one of our first games covering the team. I wasn't there, but Evan was there. We said we were going to peel the curtain back a little bit with some stories. Evan, why don't you fill us in with what happened on that day?
So as you said, this was one of the first games that we covered. It was technically the first full-time game. So this is when we had our season started to get our season passes to cover the team. We did cover. I did cover a couple games before that, but so the as you can imagine, the press box was filled just because David. It was David Price. But in that game, Price. I mean, he was hit around, but
if you look at the stat line, 3 2/3 inning, give up 7 hits, 6 runs, 3 earned. That's getting your teeth kicked in for a major league pitcher.
Oh, it absolutely is. However, he was throwing in the high 90s, which if you're, coming back from a elbow injury, which people were thinking, oh, he's going to have Tommy John. Like, that's a pretty good sign. And a lot of us in the press box were saying, like, oh, he's pitching fine. So, we weren't going to really bash him. It was more of just, hey, how are you feeling? Stuff like that.
I've been in enough PawSox McCoy Stadium media scrums that no one in the media is going to bash a player. They're going to ask fair questions, and usually it's nothing too controversial. I've asked some questions that were sort of pressing at times, but for the most part, like, I can't remember a rehabber at McCoy that was asked a question that was so egregious. I mean, I think there might have been one question that Dustin Pedroia once. But I don't think there was anything else that was even like everything else was softballs.
Yeah, it usually is. So it's not like we were going to give him, hard questions. It would have been, 5 minutes but maybe 5-10 minutes and say, hey, go on your merry way.
How are you feeling?
So, it would have been stuff like that. How's it feel to get back out there into game situations? It would it would have been like those easy questions. So after he came out of the game, the head of the PawSox PR team went down and basically tried to get David ready, like say, hey, like we're gonna do a media thing in the media, press conference,
which is actually Red Sox team policy. All players are supposed to be available to the media following a game. That's a across the board Major League Baseball rule.
I mean, don't tell Nathan Eovaldi do that, but but he said, all right, he said they were going to do it in the weight room that's just off of the PawSox clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
They were about to bring him down, and the head of the media team texted Mike Monaco, who's
going on to better things now.
Yeah, this is back when he was
before he became a superstar.
Yeah, pretty much. Said, hey, like, come on down. We're about to get ready to start. And so all of us just empty out of the press box. We're going down the
ramps at McCoy Stadium.
Yeah, thank you. Get down to the bottom. We look over to the side. There's a black Hummer that looks like it's coming straight out of Zombieland.
No, it's not. It wasn't a Hummer. It was the thing was a Jeep. It was a modified Jeep. It was a armored. It was not. It was literally an armored car, armored Jeep.
Okay, so it was. I'm right about this. The Zombieland type of car.
Yes.
Starts speeding across the parking lot, and then the head of the PR comes out and says, "Hey, Price left." All right, and they told us that Price said he was going to come talk to us, and then he tried to pull him they tried to pull him this way, and he said, well, I'm going this way. So he basically said he was going to do it and then just left.
So this is sort of like a thing that I have less of a problem with it, I think, than I did at the time. There's a lot of rehabbers that have been at McCoy. Tyler Thornburg was there forever, and a lot of these guys are trying to avoid questions. And it's not like it's going to be hard questions. You just want to get out of there. A lot of these major league guys, they want to spend as little time at McCoy Stadium as possible. And I don't know if I blame them for that. They want to get home, get back up to Boston, because a lot of them have to make that, hour commute back up. But, typically it's like what I've been doing. You just wait outside the locker room just to get them. And even if it's in the middle of a game, you just go out and do it. But yeah, David, it's not shocking. This story is like a couple years old now. Yeah, it's not shocking that Price did this that's just the kind of guy he is and the kind of guy he was in Boston. He just couldn't handle the media. And, if I would have talked to David Price that day, it would have been literally, how are you feeling? And what do you think the next steps are? And
Pretty much.
how'd you feel about your velocity? And really, there wouldn't be any real questions. I mean, there'd be real questions, but there's nothing like, you're not going to harp on him for allowing, 7 hits because he's a major league rehabber, and that doesn't really matter.
Right. I mean, it's not like you're if you're a major what Price wasn't going out there and pitching like how he would normally pitch. He was, throwing fastball, 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 fastball,
Correct.
fastball, fastball, fastball. And in a typical game situation, you're not going to be throwing nonstop fastballs. You're going to be, trying to, pitch. So it's not like he's actually trying to like get hitters out. He's just working on his pitches, and it just happens to be in a game situation. And that's what happens with a lot of major league pitchers down in the on rehabs. They just don't pitch like how they normally pitch, and fans get all up in arms because, oh my God, this guy's making $217 million and he sucks at AAA. Why do we have him?
Yeah, and I think there was a systemic problem with the Boston Red Sox and their players and what the expectations were with the media. And over the past couple of years, you saw the price blow up on Evan Drellick, as Evan Drellick was asking real questions and Price couldn't handle it. And then you saw different things over the years, but Nathan Eovaldi had an issue. The facts are the facts. If you're having a poor season, if you had a bad outing, you have to go out there and speak. If you had a good outing, it's the same thing. And, I think everything's on the table. The fact that you are a player, you're getting paid, the fans want to know, right? The fans want answers. And especially in this market, maybe not McCoy Stadium or the PawSox, but certainly Red Sox fans in general, they care, right? And they want their players to care. They want their players to show emotion. David Price, after that rehab, said, hey, I've been working on stuff, but bottom line, it was not acceptable to give up 7 hits. People would love him for it, but it's just, he never understood as a player that's what fans wanted to hear. You go out there and you get shelled by the Yankees. If Price goes in the locker room and just does what Chris Sale does and just acknowledges the defeat and acknowledges, hey, I need to be better, then fans would have loved David Price. The problem was Price didn't do that. He couldn't handle it.
No, literally, the thing is, when he didn't talk to us, the narrative around him basically became he's smug
he evaded
POS.
the media. Yeah. The narrative became very negative because of that.
Yeah, and the narrative, which a lot of us were going to be going with, was a very positive outlook. And he switched it just because he just didn't want to handle softball questions like, oh, how does it feel to get your touch, 95 on the gun?
Right. And instantly the story becomes David Price leaves McCoy in an armored vehicle running away from the media. It's like, well, that's his fault for making that narrative.
Right. And it was completely on him. It wasn't. And again, that's what a lot of players do when they're in Boston. They just can't handle the media. When at the end of the day, it's like, you don't even have to feel something. You just got to lie through your teeth. That's really all you have to do. A lot of players do that.
Yeah. I mean, you put on a face when you start talking, and there's a lot of guys that if you go to a locker room, there's some players you can go to every game, no matter win or loss, and they're going to be a solid interview because they're just good at that, and they take the pressure off players that may not like doing interviews, like a David Price. The problem is when you get paid the level that Price is and you try to be a superstar, when you are a superstar in any sport, there's this expectation where that you're going to get a lot of criticism. You put a target on your back, and Price was not a superstar player. He wasn't even a star, really. He was just a good pitcher, but he just didn't have the makeup to be a star. That's his fault.
I mean, even like in his first year, he got off that terrible start, but they needed an ace, and he was the best option that they would have had at the time. But they overpaid for him. He didn't really want to be here because they
didn't sign John Lester.
Right. And I hate this. I hate to say it, but that's what this all literally stems to: just not signing Lester when they should have.
Yeah. We'll move on to our final topic here, and it's kind of like a crazy flip. Actually, we've been talking about baseball for the first 54 minutes of the show, and we're going to conclude with football. We're going to conclude with Tom Brady. Brady was on Howard Stern's show yesterday. Evan, what did Tom Brady talk about with Stern?
So it was a lot of basically, personal life, some football stuff. Basically it was a lot of Stern basically just trying to get Brady to like say stuff that he normally wouldn't say. But just in general, his tone wasn't that robot sounding Brady that we've been so used to seeing over the last 20 years. He did sound like he was just talking to like one of the guys, which for a lot of, I know for me, it was a little bit refreshing just because it doesn't sound like he's the, robot that we all think he is. Like he actually sounded like a normal person, but he basically confirmed a lot of stuff in his interview, where, him and Belichick do see eye to eye on a lot of stuff like receivers. Like if you're throwing, like if there's a receiver out there he doesn't trust, he's not going to throw to him. And Brady and Belichick like agreed with them on stuff like that, which I think basically, tells you that last year he didn't trust Philip Dorsett towards the end of the season. After him, he was absolutely automatic the previous year. But the big thing was Giselle 100% had influence on him in football decisions. They had, I know a couple of years ago, it came out that they were having some issues in their marriage, and Brady basically confirmed that in the interview. They were going to counseling, and Brady and Giselle basically said, like, hey, like I don't feel like you're pulling your weight around the house. It feels like you're just distant. You're focusing too much on football, which, when you're reaching your 40s, like that really shouldn't be an issue. So when it came to the offseason, that's when he stopped going to like OTAs, is basically more of a father and not so much, just being that football player.
I sort of took the interview as, yes, a breath of fresh air, but it was also, hey, I'm no longer a New England Patriot, so I can't be a New England Patriot. I have to put on a different face, a different persona. This might be who Brady really is, but to me, it was more of a pivot by him to try to change his national appeal, right? You're going to Tampa Bay. Let's face it, Tampa Bay isn't the biggest football market, right? College football is king down there.
Yeah.
So Brady's trying to appeal to a national audience that had previously either disliked him or just respected him from a distance. But this is about the future. This is about TB12, the brand, right? This is about Brady really coming out as a media personality, a media star, really. And I think if you look at what Tony Romo made off of CBS on his new deal, and you're like, well, if you're Brady, what's your next step, right? Your goal is to build this TB12 brand. And what better way to do it by than just becoming a bigger figure in the media, The facts are the facts. And I think the fact that he put on this Howard Stern interview, you're going to get more people calling up Brady for interviews. And the fact that it was interesting enough and he's had so much success, maybe he will transition into the broadcast booth after football, which I think last year you probably would have said no, but now you hear this interview and you're like, oh, well, I think he's vying for it.
Yeah, and getting back to my point of him not sounding like a robot, like you could tell, like, say in his weekly interview with WEI, it would be like he's, trying to talk slow. He's thinking of basically trying to say stuff without actually saying it, and try to basically steer the questions around. So you could tell he was thinking in this interview. He wasn't thinking.
Or does he just not respect Bruce Arians enough, or does Bruce Arians just not care enough as a coach? I think, the fact that he was in New England, a lot of it has to do with Bill Belichick in a way. Is this is built the way Bill Belichick talks, so therefore everyone sort of looks at Belichick's example with the media and sort of manipulates it and does it themselves. And that's sort of what Brady did with the Patriots. And now he's more freestyling, free-flowing, and this is probably more like Tom Brady, who he really is, rather than what he was with the Patriots. I think that's sort of disheartening if you're a Patriots fan, though, to know that Brady in New England was more of a facade and not the real guy.
I mean, if you pay attention to the way the Patriots are and just the way the team has basically been running for the last 20 years, you had to kind of assume that. Face it. Like, you weren't getting the, the guy that you thought that you loved. Like, for example, like Bill Belichick, a lot of players basically say he's one of the funniest guys that you've ever talked to, just when in like a normal conversation.
Right.
But when you watch him, in a press conference, you think he's the world's biggest a-hole.
Yes. There's a lot of coaches that are like that now because of Bill Belichick.
Right.
Look, it's a smart way to do it, but you got to win when you're doing it. And I think if you're Brady, you're like, well, I'm going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is not a winning football team. They haven't won in a long time. There's no guarantees you're winning in 2021 or 2020. So it's like, well, you have to kind of be more open, more of a nice guy, because you can't get away with being a dick. You can't do it if you're losing football games. Belichick gets away with it because they win, and they win a lot. And even without Tom Brady, you're talking about a 10, 11-win Patriots team. And that just speaks to what Belichick has built. But I do think it's interesting, sort of Belichick saying, and Brady saying that Belichick agreed with him with not throwing to receivers. And
yeah, I mean, that was just like one example of something that he brought up. But there was a lot of stuff where it was like that was just like one. Yeah, the big takeaway that I took out of it was like him and Giselle did have a lot of issues, and face it, she did have a lot of say in like what was going on. Like,
yeah, that's been widely known for a while. I mean, not publicly, but I mean, the media's been speculating.
Brady confirmed it.
Yeah, the media's been speculating that for years, that they've been having issues, and I think that was one of the first things people came up with when he started not attending OTAs. And look, did that affect the team last year? Does that affect the team not having Brady in OTAs? I would say last year it very much affected the team, because your starting quarterback wasn't with these young receivers. He didn't build that rapport with them. So when the season came around, he didn't trust them. But it's also like, well, Tom, you weren't there to put in the work. I think this is a two-sided coin. It's like, all right, if you want to be the family man, then it's all right. It's time to retire, right? If you're not going to be fully committed to being Brady, the football player, then you should retire.
I mean, I'll definitely give you that for, say, a guy like Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry. But you also had Mohamed Sanu come in later on in the year, who was supposed to help. He did absolutely nothing, but he was hurt. You brought in Antonio Brown.
But you can't say you didn't. You cannot say you didn't trust Jacoby. So, like, my problem is you cannot say, oh, I don't trust those receivers. I don't trust these young receivers. Okay, but you weren't in OTAs to get that rapport with the young receivers. So you forced the Patriots to go out and get you. Jacoby Myers could have scored 10 touchdowns last year. You didn't try.
I mean, you're right about that, but at the end of the day, you did have Antonio Brown. You had Josh Gordon. You had Mohamed Sanu. You had Demaryius Thomas on your roster. You had these talented receivers that you wouldn't have to have that rapport with, because they're talented enough where they would be able to go out and get a ball, even if it wasn't close, or if be able to basically just learn general football plays.
Yeah, I think they had enough talent on offense. They definitely invested. A lot of it was bad luck. N'Keal Harry's injury was bad luck. Mohamed Sanu's injury was bad luck. Edelman, yep. And then obviously Antonio Brown was, I don't know if that's not bad luck at all, actually. Antonio Brown thinks not bad luck. That's expected. More
just him going off the deep end.
That's an expected outcome when they signed him. But yeah, I think, we're going to get a different Brady in the future, and I think is all positioning for post-football. I think that's why he's playing in Tampa Bay, is how can I build the TB12 brand and position myself for the next 5-10 years? Because I think Brady loves seeing his face on TV and in the media, and I think his TB12 brand has really been the focus of his life the last couple of years.
Sure.
But I would say last year, like, they had the number one defense in football for a while. Yes, it sort of tapered off, but I'd put most of their ineffectiveness on offense on Brady's shoulders. So it's Tampa Bay. Good luck.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you with that, but he should have better luck just because they have more guys on offense than Tampa Bay. I mean, basically, you have O.J. Howard, you at tight end, you have Mike Evans, you have Chris Godwin as receivers, and then you got two pretty good running backs too.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that, but I have my doubts on whether or not that's going to be effective.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for that division is you have this. You have the New Orleans Saints, you have Carolina Panthers, and you have the Atlanta Falcons. Granted, that Falcons really tapered off, but they still got a pretty good team. The Saints are the Saints. Like, they're probably going to win the division. And then you have the Panthers, which, face it, like, without Cam Newton, they weren't a bad team. I mean, granted, all their offense was through Christian McCaffrey, but they're still not a bad team. So it's going to be definitely a tough division, but I think they do have the stuff to possibly get a wild card spot.
I also would say with Brady, though, is all right, you're going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. you didn't trust your players in New England because you didn't really work with them because you didn't show up to OTAs, right? These young receivers. So yes, you're going into a situation where you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, OJ Howard, Cameron Brate. So you have the talent there, but is Brady going to go into OTAs this year?
I mean, they're not going to have him, but
if they did, so like the fact is, all right, they're not going to have OTAs, or even if they did, he probably wouldn't show up. So they're going to have a limited timeline to really get acquainted with these receivers. And if Brady doesn't trust them to start the year, what happens, right? So there's that whole aspect of it. Like, all right, you didn't want to put the work in and you're back after their career in New England. And you didn't trust these receivers because you didn't put enough work in to trust them, right? You were too busy drinking water to avoid getting tan. Look, I just look at it and I'm like, I think Brady mailed it in the last couple of years, and I don't know how it's going to get any better in Tampa Bay. Like, is Giselle going to let him go to OTAs or do extra training sessions because she's living in Florida or living in New York? I don't know. But look, I just don't know how it's going to get better in a new situation. He's going to have to work harder to be successful in Tampa Bay, and the fact is he's put less work in the last couple of years. So,
I mean, you're not wrong, but you would just think that because those guys do have the talent behind them, they might have a better chance of getting like on track with them. But granted, that doesn't really help you with any guys that possibly come with the draft or guys go around the depth charts already there. But
because Tampa Bay was right on the brink of being a playoff team last year,
they were. I mean, if it wasn't for Jameis Winston having a 30-30 season,
yeah, sure,
30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, they probably would have had a chance to actually make a wild card spot.
Maybe. They're still in division with Drew Brees, so
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see Brady and the Bucs being better than the Saints, so, and I don't think Brady can win a Super Bowl going through the wild card. So, best of luck in Tampa Bay, but I think it might be over, and you should have retired.
I have not disagreed with that.
All right, that's it for Trifecta Sports Talk. That was a long show despite being less topics, so we'll continue to retool, reformat the show as need be, but I think this 5:30 on Thursday thing's working out pretty well, and hopefully next week we have some more information on this Major League Baseball potential return and more information on what's going to happen with McCoy Stadium with the Pawtucket Red Sox and other events. But I'm kind of shocked on how much stuff we have to talk about every week, despite there being no sports.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, make sure to check out TrifectaNetworkSports.com. Thanks for watching. And as an update, the PawSox are ahead 7-6 in their virtual game. So make sure to go. I see 7-6 here. Make sure to go check out those guys out.